The whiskey industry has been running the same trick on peat lovers for 20 years. They put 5 or 6 bottles on every best peated Scotch list, jack prices up, and count on you never looking past the names you already know. Lagavulin 16 used to cost $60, now it pushes past $100. The whiskey has not changed. Your willingness to pay more has. Distilleries you have never heard of are making peated Scotch that beats those bottles blind for half the price. These are 10 of them. Number 10, Johnnie Walker Green Label, around $50 to $60. You hear Johnnie Walker and you think of blended Scotch. The red label you mix with ginger ale. The blue label you buy someone as a retirement gift. But Green Label is neither of those things. It is a blended malt, which means every drop of whiskey inside the bottle comes from malt distilleries, no grain whiskey at all. The blend includes single malts from Caol Ila, Talisker from the Isle of Skye, Cragganmore from Speyside, and Linkwood. It carries a 15-year age statement, which means the youngest whiskey in that bottle has sat in a cask for at least 15 years. The result is a smoky, complex, layered Scotch that costs about a third of what Johnnie Walker Blue Label sells for. And for anyone who actually enjoys peated whiskey, Green Label is the better drink. Blue Label is designed to offend no one. Green Label is designed to have character. If you have ever spent $180 on Blue Label thinking you were getting the premium Johnnie Walker experience, this is the bottle you actually wanted. Number 9, Compass Box Peat Monster, around $55 to $65. Compass Box is an independent bottler based in London, founded by a former Johnnie Walker marketing director named John Glazer. Instead of owning a distillery, they buy casks from existing Scottish distilleries and blend them into something new. The Peat Monster is built almost entirely from Caol Ila and Laphroaig single malts. Roughly 65% Caol Ila, aged between 10 and 15 years in refill hogsheads, and 35% Laphroaig in the same cask type. Bottled at 46%, non-chill filtered, natural colour. Refill hogsheads are a key part of the profile. What makes the Peat Monster interesting is what it does with those ingredients. Instead of the aggressive medicinal punch you get from Laphroaig on its own or the oily citrus smoke of Caol Ila, the blend marries them into something more elegant than either distillery produces alone. Expect tropical fruit, a creamy texture, gentle campfire smoke, and a long, savoury finish. Compass Box publishes the full recipe on their website, which is more transparency than most single malt distilleries offer. For the price of one bottle of Lagavulin 16, you could buy the Peat Monster and still have enough left over for a decent dram of something else. Number 8, Benromach Peat Smoke, around $55 to $65. Nobody expects great peat from Speyside. That region is famous for sweet, sherried, fruit-driven whiskey from names like Macallan, Glenfiddich, and Glenlivet. Benromach did not get that memo. This is a small distillery in the town of Forres, owned by independent bottler Gordon and MacPhail. Their peat smoke expression uses barley peated to between 55 and 67 parts per million, depending on the batch. That puts it in heavier peat territory than most Islay distilleries. Lagavulin sits at about 35 parts per million. Laphroaig is about 45 parts per million. Ardbeg is about 55 parts per million. Benromach Peat Smoke is above all of them. But here is where it gets interesting, because the spirit character underneath is Speyside, not Islay. The smoke sits on top of honey, malt and orchard fruit rather than brine and iodine. It is a completely different expression of peat, like tasting a bonfire in a meadow instead of a bonfire on a beach. Bottled at 46% without chill filtration, it delivers an experience that most peat fans have never encountered before, because they have never looked beyond Islay for their smoke. The icon it embarrasses is Lagavulin 8-year-old, which costs about the same but gives you a less complex, more one-dimensional peat experience. Number 7. Around $50 to $60. This distillery sits on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula on Scotland's west coast, one of the most remote spots in the Highlands. It was built in 2014 by the independent bottler Adelphi. and it was designed from the ground up to be one of Scotland's most sustainable distilleries. The energy comes from a biomass boiler and a hydroelectric scheme on site. Every bottle comes with a QR code that tells you exactly which casks went into it, what percentage is peated versus unpeated, what type of barley was used, and how long fermentation lasted. That level of traceability is almost unheard of in Scotch. The core expression is a marriage of roughly half peated and half unpeated spirit, matured in both bourbon and sherry casks. The result is coastal peat smoke layered with vanilla, orchard fruit, and a gentle salinity that comes from maturing right next to the Atlantic. Bottled at 46.8%, natural colour, no chill filtration. The distillery is barely a decade old, but the whisky community has already noticed. Reviewers consistently rank it alongside whiskies costing twice as much. The icon it challenges: Highland Park 12, which offers a similar peat and sweetness balance but at 43% with chill filtration and caramel colouring. Ardnamurchan gives you more integrity in the bottle for less money. Number 6, Ledaig 10, around $50 to $60. This is the peated expression from Tobermory Distillery on the Isle of Mull. Ledaig and Tobermory are two names for the same distillery, two completely different whiskies. Tobermory is the unpeated range. Ledaig is the heavily peated range, using barley peated to between 30 and 40 parts per million at Port Ellen Maltings on Islay. Bottled at 46.3%, non-chill filtered, no added colouring. The flavour profile sits somewhere between Islay and the maritime character of the West Coast Islands. Medicinal smoke, sweet brine, honey, vanilla, and an earthy campfire quality that sets it apart from the more iodine-driven Islay malts. Independent whiskey reviewer Ralphie named Ledaig 10 his Whiskey of the Year in 2022. The Outstanding Scotch Whisky Awards named it a Best Value finalist in both 2023 and 2024. And here is the thing that should frustrate you. Most liquor stores do not even stock it because the name is unfamiliar and it does not come from Islay. The icon it quietly outperforms is Talisker 10, which costs about the same but delivers less complexity and less proof. Number 5. Kilchoman Machir Bay, around $55 to $65. Kilchoman is the youngest distillery on Islay, founded in 2005 on a working farm. They are one of the very few Scotch distilleries that grows a portion of their own barley and malts it on site. Their annual 100% Islay release uses barley grown, malted, distilled, matured and bottled entirely on the island, which is something almost no other Islay distillery can claim. Machir Bay is their flagship. Named after one of the most spectacular beaches on Islay, it combines bourbon and sherry-matured whiskey into something that balances classic peat with bright citrus, vanilla and tropical fruit. 46% alcohol by volume, natural colour and no chill filtration. If you have ever tried Ledaig 10 and decided you do not like peated Scotch, Machir Bay is the bottle that might change your mind. It has the smoke, but it also has the sweetness and fruit that Ledaig deliberately strips away. One reviewer described it as possibly the best quality to price ratio of any entry-level Islay single malt. The icon it outclasses as a gateway is Ledaig 10, which is more famous but sends more people running from peat than it converts. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. We cover spirits like this every week, and we have a few more on this list that might genuinely surprise you. Number 4. Caol Ila 12, around $55 to $70. Caol Ila is one of the biggest distilleries, producing roughly 6.5 million litres of spirit a year. Most of it disappears into Johnnie Walker blends, particularly Black Label and Double Black. The single malt releases are almost an afterthought for the parent company Diageo, which means Caol Ila 12 gets a fraction of the marketing budget that its stablemate Lagavulin receives. That is a gift for anyone paying attention. Caol Ila 12 is bottled at 43% and offers a lighter, more citrus-forward take on peat. Where Lagavulin is dense, heavy and brooding, Caol Ila is bright, maritime and almost elegant. Lemon zest, green apple, gentle wood smoke, a touch of white pepper and a clean, saline finish. It is the malt that converts people who think they do not like smoky whiskey. The icon it directly challenges is Lagavulin 16. Both are made by Diageo and both are from Ilo. Lagavulin 16 costs nearly twice as much. Caol Ila 12 is arguably the better introduction to what the island can do, and at half the price, it is not even a close contest on value. Number 3. Ardbeg Uigeadail. Around $75 to $90. This might be the single most celebrated peated Scotch in the whisky community that does not have an age statement on the bottle. Ardbeg Uigeadail is named after a loch on Islay, and it marries bourbon cask matured Ardbeg with whiskey aged in ex-Oloroso sherry casks. Bottled at 54.2%, cask strength, no chill filtration. The combination of heavily peated Ardbeg spirit and rich dark sherry influence creates something that tastes like smoked dark chocolate, barbecued stone fruit, espresso, tar and iodine, with a finish that goes on for minutes. It is one of those rare whiskies where every sip reveals something new. Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible named it World Whiskey of the Year in 2009, and it regularly scores in the mid to high 90s from independent reviewers. The icon it humbles is Octomore, which Uigeadail releases at over $200 as the most heavily peated Scotch on the planet. Octomore is a spectacle. Uigeadail is a masterpiece, and it costs less than half the price. Number 2, Port Charlotte 10. Around $65 to $75. Port Charlotte is the heavily peated range from Uigeadail Distillery on Islay. Uigeadail's core range is completely unpeated, and Port Charlotte goes the other direction entirely. It is peated to 40 parts per million, bottled at 50%, non-chill filtered with no added colour. Every single batch comes with a full breakdown of which casks were used, what percentage of each type, and when they were filled. It is radical transparency in an industry that usually hides behind vague marketing language about hand-selected casks and time-honoured traditions. The whiskey delivers maritime peat smoke, vanilla, lemon oil, smoked bacon, and a briny minerality that tastes like the Islay coastline in a glass. At 50%, it has enough body and proof to stand up to a splash of water without falling apart, and it opens up beautifully when you add a few drops. The icon it beats is Ardbeg Uigeadail, which runs from $80 to over $100 and delivers a similar level of intensity, but tells you almost nothing about what is actually in the bottle. Port Charlotte gives you the same caliber of Islay peat whiskey with full disclosure for less money. That combination is nearly impossible to beat. Number 1. Lagavulin 8-year-old, around $55 to $65. Yes, Lagavulin, the same distillery that makes the iconic 16, the bottle that sits at the top of almost every best peated Scotch list ever written. Except this is not the 16. This is the 8-year-old, originally released in 2016 to celebrate the distillery's 200th anniversary. It was supposed to be limited. Demand was so high they made it permanent. Lagavulin 8-year-old is everything the 16 is, with the volume turned up and the price turned down. At 48%, it hits harder than the 16's 43%. The peat is more aggressive, more youthful, more alive. Where the 16 has mellowed into something elegant and complex over its longer maturation, the 8 is raw, punchy, and visceral. Intense bonfire smoke, lemon peel, black pepper, maritime salt, and a finish that lingers with ash and dried herbs. Some of the most respected voices in whiskey have said they prefer the 8 to the 16, not as a budget alternative, as a better expression of what Lagavulin does best. The 16-year-old currently runs anywhere from $90 to $120 depending on where you are. The 8 costs roughly half that. You are getting whiskey from the exact same stills, the same water source, the same maltings, the same warehouse, just 8 years in the cask instead of 16. For many peat lovers, those missing 8 years are not something the whiskey lacks. They are 8 years of the oak softening the very thing you came to Lagavulin for in the first place, the smoke. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing. We will see you in the next one.